Okay, hi folks. Oh, that was fun. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Yes, okay, perfect. So thank you so much, Amy, for that wonderful introduction. I forgot about that interview. I did that years ago. All still true, though. All still true. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. So I've been at MUN, the physics department, since about 2004, partly full-time as a lab instructor, partly full-time as a faculty member, partly a little bit of both, but I've been around now for a while. I'm very new to education research. I came into that a couple of years ago, largely in part of Dr. Keith Power, who I don't think is with us today, but he's a collaborator on this project, as is Sean Fardy from the Department of Education. He's a PhD candidate. I would please happily invite anybody to pop in with questions at any time. I also have a little bit of a habit of talking too fast, so I'm going too fast. I will not be offended if you just tell me to slow down. Okay, so let's get going. So, oh heck, there we go. I'm thinking that everybody here in this meeting today knows full well what UDL is, Universal Design. I'm going to expand a little bit on how I see it working with physics. And I'll first say that traditionally physics is kind of garbage at UDL. The way we teach now, the way we deliver our labs now is not very different from what I did as a student myself 35 years ago. So I don't think there's been lots of change since then. And I think to apply UDL means to bring change. And overall, I would say that I think that's a really good thing. I think physics needs a bit of shaking up. And with UDL, I think if we support some students, then in the end, we support most of the students or all of the students. So that's kind of the premise of the things I think about here. So in my research project, I take some features of universal design, I apply them to Physics 1051 labs. So first, I'll just let you know what a typical Physics 1051 lab looks like. So students come in, they walk in the door, they get 1 hour and 50 minutes, so just shy of 2 hours. And everything is done in that 2-hour period. They come in, they complete the lab, they write their lab report, and they submit it at the end of the lab period. The TAs take the lab books home, the TAs grade them, write their feedback, give them back to the students next time around. All the instructions are written on PowerPoint files, which are available as PDFs to the students ahead of time before the lab. So they can see everything beforehand if they wish. During the lab period itself, we staff and TAs circulate around to help the students when they're struggling. So I picked the motor lab to walk you through a little bit today to show you what it looks like for a student, kind of what it looked like the typical way and what it looks like now after I've applied a few different concepts. Okay, so the lab itself, this motor lab, is my favorite by far. It consists of 2 bits. One is a bunch of physics theory, and the other part is practical. They make a little motor which they can get spinning. It's really fun. So I'm going to give you the gist. I'm going to take you through a little bit of those lab instructions and show you what the students see. So one of the first slides the students see in an introduction slide, this is in the theory portion of the lab, it talks about magnetic forces. The students know a little bit about this from class. They might be a little shaky. They might not have studied very much. I'll give you the backbone behind a magnetic force. So gravity is a force we all know really well. Around the Earth, we have a gravity field. And if we hold something up and we let it go, it falls down. Okay, we're super used to that. We know how that works. Magnetic forces are a little bit wild. They're a little bit weird. So if we have something like a piece of wire and we put a current through it, and if there's a magnetic field that points down, it turns out that the magnetic force will push it forward. Okay, so that's super crazy. Another crazy thing about a magnetic force is if we have this current in the wire going this way and we tilt our wire up and down, it wouldn't have a force at all. So kind of the big takeaway is that if we have a wire with some current in a magnetic field, it'll feel a force, but in a weird direction, and only if it's pointing the right way. So that's a super important thing that the students have to learn. Okay, the next bit that we talk about is what if we take our wire and we turn it into a circle? So that's the next thing we do, and that's what the students are going to do in the lab. So they take this wire, they're going to loop it, and it's going to be near a magnet, and it's going to be in a magnetic field. One side of the loop is going to go out, one side of the loop is going to go in, and it makes it spin in a circle as long as everything is in the right direction. Okay, so that's the basic physics that the students study in this lab. The students also see a slide like this. This explains torque, which is related to rotation. It's a term the students know, but we do put it here in this slide because it's important for the students to understand about rotation. Okay, hopefully you're all with me here. So next we show them some pictures of a loop that looks like this. We put it near some magnets. That makes a magnetic field. We ask the students to think about all the directions. And then we ask them to think about which way it's going to turn. So these are the slides that the student will be reading as they get ready to do the lab. This is how the material is presented to them. I've trimmed these slides a little bit because I know how bad a dense slide looks like on a PowerPoint, but hopefully you get the idea of what the students see as they're getting ready. Okay, so this is the theory, this is the background. Then, as they begin the theory part of the lab, they see a set of questions that look like this. The picture is showing the red square there. That's the loop of wire. That's the bit with the current. And then all those X's show the magnetic field. And the students are asked to think about what they read in the theory pages, what they understand, and tell us what's going to happen to the loop. Is it going to move? Is it going to rotate? What's going to happen? What's the motion going to be like? So that's what they're answering in this theory part of the lab. I'm really hoping I didn't lose anybody. I know people don't like physics equations. That's okay. Okay, so that's our theory part. Then we get on to the practical part. So they get a set of apparatus. So they get a power supply. I've got mine set up right here. Okay, there's my entire setup. I've got the same equipment that the students have because we're going to make this together as we go. So again, this is all in written instructions. The student has this open on the computer in front of them. And the deal is they follow these written instructions and they make this little working motor. So here's what their instructions look like. The first bit, okay, and I'm going to do this as we go, is they take a piece of copper wire. I think you can see that. So they take a piece of copper wire and they have to form it into a little coil. So I'm just going to wrap it around the top of my water bottle. I'm going to make a coil like that. So they need a little circular base, and that's what the picture is showing there too. So you have to wrap it into a coil. Okay, so they wrap it around a circular base and they make a coil. The picture shows that this is what their coil should look like, nice and round and tight. If they don't read the instructions very carefully, like that last sentence that says keep your coil tidy, if they don't read that very carefully, these things tend to look like a little bit of a snarl. Their coil might look something like this instead. Okay, so reading the instructions is very important. Then they get a whole slide. I think I've trimmed off 2 or 3 of the paragraphs here. And the whole gist of this slide is that you have to use sandpaper to remove some of the plastic coating. So that's what I'm doing here now. Taking the end of that wire, I'm rubbing it with sandpaper, and I'm taking the insulation off the outside of the wire. I would hazard a guess that not less than 40% of students miss this slide. They don't do this at all. Okay, so there's an important part. They take the insulation off. Then we go to the next slide. This is all about orientation. We said that the orientation matters. So they've got a little bamboo skewer. They put the skewer through the middle of the loop. Okay, sometimes that's a little bit hard to get. So now the skewer is through the middle. We get it nice and balanced. And then we've got some extra bits of the instructions. So one of our pictures right here on this side, that shows that the wire needs to be on the top of the stick on both sides. Okay, so following that picture is really important. And then our bottom picture here shows that we want it to be nice and secure, so they have to tape it in place. Okay, and if we don't get it all nice and neat and perfectly balanced, it is not going to work. Okay, next slide. Here we stress, we've got capital letters in bright red talking about the directions, right? Things need to be perpendicular, and if it's not perpendicular, it's not going to work. Okay, so that's where we get after this far. Then what we have to do is we have to take, so this is our DC motor, this is the motor bit. Then we have to put it on a stand. So here is my stand. I put a couple of magnets in my base, so these are just little round magnets. I put support stands in there. So they're my support stands. I rest the motor inside. Then I have to hook it up to the power supply. So I'll use my alligator clips. So I've just got some wires going into those support stands. Then I plug them into my power supply. I turn the power supply on. This is the moment of truth. Okay. Turn it on. I'm going to turn up my current and my voltage. It's hard because I'm trying to hold it up. And then that little motor starts to spin. I got to say, when students do this, they get so excited. I've seen more of these go up on Snapchat. The students get thrilled. They take a little video because they've made something. So that's why I picked this lab. It's totally fun, totally exciting, totally doable. I'm at this over 20 years. I can make this motor first shot every time. Okay, little brag there, but it is tough for the students. But it is doable. Everything they need to know to make this work is given in those instruction slides. So all that said, that this is supposed to work and I can make it work. The truth is, I would say that of a group of 30 pairs of students, it is so fun, so fun. Of a set of 30 pairs of students, because they do work with a partner, 1 or 2 pairs will follow the instructions, hit the button, and it will spin. 1 or 2 pairs tops. Another 3 to 4, they'll try it, they'll be close. You can give them a little nudge and say, I think you missed something. Look at slide number 7 and try it again. So a small percentage more, you can say, I think it wasn't quite working, and then they'll get it. But for a solid 2/3 of the class, they struggle quite a bit and they don't get it working and they're frustrated. It's just not working the way they thought it would. So there's a bunch of questions. For the students who got it working, why did it work? Why didn't they have trouble? Some of the reasons could be maybe they don't have trouble reading those instructions and absorbing that information. That might be easy for them. Maybe these students have a mechanical knack. I guess we all know people that when they try and just do stuff, they don't have any issues. They can just sit down, make something because they're good at that for whatever reason. Maybe the students read ahead on the instructions, they made detailed notes and they made a plan. So there's lots of reasons why those students who succeeded quickly, there's lots of reasons that couldn't work, that did work. For the students where it mostly didn't work, why didn't it work for them? Why did they find it harder? And I know it doesn't work because they try it and the hand goes up and they say, Miss, mine doesn't work. What am I supposed to do? When I walk over to those students and I have a look at what they've done, so I just pick up their motor and I look at it, right off the bat, within seconds, I can see that maybe they didn't sand it, maybe the wires aren't on the right side of the stick, maybe it's not the right orientation. I can see what went wrong. This to me tells me that they're having trouble going from those words on the slide to putting it into practice. There's something getting lost in that translation. I definitely don't think it's intelligence. I definitely don't think it's capability. Every student in that room is quite smart and quite capable. They can all do it. Um, they might not have the knack, but for me, I think it's something about those written instructions. And I might have a little bias because that's me. I can't read dense pages of instructions and figure stuff out. I'm the person who throws out the instruction manual and says it has to work like this. So I get it if they can't read it. So what do we do? So ultimately, I think about what is the goal in a physics lab, and my goal is for the students to be able to follow the instructions, however they do follow them, complete the work with some sense of pride and accomplishment. You know, I faced a task. It was a little tricky, but I did it. And I think that's important for Physics 1051 students because this is the class who mostly go on to be engineers. This will be their career. They will be given a task. They will have to figure out how to do it. I think our role as staff and TAs should be guidance and assistance, but not to do the work for them. It is their work to do. So hopefully that sets the scene reasonably well, and we can get into what my 4 UDL strategies are that I've kind of put together to make the labs a good learning experience. So my first attempt, my first goal is to get them ready for the labs. The students are told to read the instruction slides in advance. I would hazard a guess that very few do. Yeah, they just don't do that, right? We tell them to, they have a lot on their plates. So I filmed a set of pre-lab videos to be available for every experiment in Physics 1051. And these videos walk through the lab objective, the lab theory, the apparatus, the procedure, and the analysis. Let's see. Something important is that all of the material that I do in the video is also available in the instructions. It's not different material. It's just prepackaged in a video that hopefully is more digestible. And it is my hope that if students watch, they will feel prepared and they'll know what to do. That said, time is very precious for our undergraduate students. They have a lot on their plates, and it does help to have an incentive to get them to watch a video. So I give them the incentive that seems to have the most impact for them, which is their grades. They care about getting high marks. So my incentive is this. Every single lab has pre-lab questions. They are the same 4 questions every time. What's the objective? What's the theory? What's the apparatus? And what's the procedure? Basically, what do you plan to do and what are you going to do? So those are the 4 questions. They can answer all of these questions from looking at the videos. All of the answers are in there. These questions are only graded if they're done in advance. So the students come into the lab room, they show us these questions, we give them a check if they're done, we don't check it if they're not done, and only the ones that have been checked will get graded in the end. Okay, so they only get marks for these questions if they're done ahead of time. So that pushes them to watch the videos ahead of time. So this hopefully motivates them to watch it. I'm going to show you a little bit of the videos so you get a sense. So the first one goes with the theory. Is this going to play? Okay, yes. Is this loud enough? So here I'm starting off just describing what the equations are. Skip ahead. I'm describing to them how they're supposed to use what we call a right-hand rule to figure out all the important directions. Then I'm drawing some diagrams like they'll be seeing in the lab questions. Then I'm adding some more things and I'm showing them at the board what I do to figure the things out. So that's what the theory video looks like. It just walks them step by step by step what each of these things mean and what we do to apply them to the lab. Okay, next slide. Okay, this one is the apparatus. I'll play a little bit of this one. Let's see how much we'll play this one. Okay, so I'm just going to show them all the bits and pieces. I'll skip ahead to the construction step. Okay, so that's me showing them the loop. And then we skip ahead to putting the loop on the stick. And maybe I can skip ahead a little further. Okay, I'll hit pause there now. Something I think, I think is helpful is that there's my constant stream of thoughts as I'm putting it together and the little tips that you just pick up over the years. You just can't put all those thoughts into a written document. It's just not reasonable. So those are the set of videos. It kind of leads to a good question in my mind, which is, are they watching the videos? Is there any evidence at all that they watch? So, oh, sure. Let's see. Oh, having the slides in the background while you do the task. I agree. I really like having the slides there because I can model for the student of, as I do this bit, here's where that instruction is. Hopefully that makes it easier for the student to make that link while they're there. Oh, and then Amy commented about the stream of consciousness as well. Multiple types of learning. Yeah, that's really what I'm going for because students are so different. People just absorb material in different ways, and I am trying to reach them in the different ways. So Are they watching? So far I haven't done any formal data collection. I only just got ethics approval to start collecting data. But I would say so far, yes, I do see some evidence that they're watching. I've got a bunch of students who just come to me unprompted and say, hey, those are really helpful. They were good. I actually see students with these videos open in the lab, on their phone or on their iPad or whatever. So they do actually use them. And I get similar comments from my colleagues and my TAs that the students tell them that they're useful and they're watching. Then the other thing is all these videos go on YouTube and YouTube keeps stats. So for the theory video, looks like I've got 331 views on that. I would say that since I've implemented these, I've had about 300 students go through the lab. So 331 views, 300 students, some students are watching. And for the apparatus, the motor building, we're still close-ish to 300. So I would definitely say, yes, students are watching, that they are there. Definitely going to keep up with these stats. YouTube can further break it down by country of origin, gender, whether they use subtitles, how they get here. So YouTube is really cool for that, which, yeah, go YouTube, right? So that's the pre-lab videos. Then the next thing that I like to do in every lab is just have a live demo. So up at the front of the room for every single experiment, I have a setup, I've got my working motor, it's on the main desk. And after I say good morning to the students and I welcome them to the lab, I invite them to all come up front at any point and just look and see what my completed setup looks like. They're welcome to come up, touch it, move it around, bring their own equipment, look at theirs, compare it to mine, ask questions. That works pretty well. Students, they'll sometimes come up and take a photo. In this lab, I think it works particularly well because they'll bring up their motor and sometimes theirs isn't working. So I'll just say, hey, look at yours, look at mine, and we'll play spot the difference. So that gives them some ideas of what to try when they go back to their seat. Then we have labs where they're making these fiddly little circuits and they can come up and look at where every wire goes. So this live demo, I think is useful. Again, I don't have any data collection on this, but I do think it helps. Okay, so that's 1 and 2. Number 3 is another set of videos. These are used during the lab period itself. So the pre-lab videos are intended to be watched before they come into the room. But then there is another set of videos. Sometimes it's the same video, depends on the content. So sometimes different, sometimes it's the same. But I just put a QR code right there in the instructions. So when students are answering a specific question, if they feel like they're a little bit lost, they can scan the QR code. It'll pop open the YouTube video that takes them through how to answer it. Again, it's not different from the lab instructions, but it's just a video of the instructions with me saying, put your thumb here, put your finger here, and find your answer here. Students do find that helpful. Something I think is helpful about this approach is that students will sometimes come to these questions, they'll get a little bit frustrated, but they won't think to go back to the theory page and read the instructions. They'll either sit there mad or they'll skip it or they'll call us over and they'll want us to tell them the answer. And sometimes just this little push of being able to look at a quick 2-minute video to think about your answer. Sometimes it's just, that's the little bit that they need to get them over the hump to get to the answer. Another benefit that comes to me about this is that some students, for whatever reason, they do not want to ask for help. They don't want to put their hand up and say, I can't do this, will you help me? This helps those students. So if they're not willing to call somebody over, they can have a look at this and hopefully that will get them to do it. So it's just one extra way to get a little bit of help during the lab. So we do it for theory parts, we do it for practical parts, kind of wherever we think they might need a little bump, I'll pop in a QR code to a short video that will help them. Okay, that's 1, 2, and 3. Number 4 is about assessment and feedback. So the way the assessment has worked so far is, like I said, the students are writing their lab report in the lab period. They submit it at the end of the 2 hours. The TAs grade it. They write their feedback. They give it back with the intent that the student will read the feedback next time, learn from the feedback, and move on. I guess that's pretty standard and traditional. That's the way most things work. I see frequently that the students, I guess I can't say if they read the feedback or not. I don't know that if I don't ask them, but they often don't seem to respond to the feedback. And the way I think that's true is that they'll often make the same mistake repeatedly. So they'll do the same thing wrong every single experiment. So to me, that says they're not getting much from the feedback. So I tried a new strategy. It's a variation on something I pioneered a few years back, which is a checkpoint in the lab. So my original version of a checkpoint is that in almost every lab, we had this one spot where students would come, they would do something wrong or they would get stuck, and it would happen to most students. So I said, let's address this. And we put a little line in the lab, and the line says, after you finish this task, call an instructor over, have them check your work. So they call us over at this tricky spot. We check their work. If they're fine, we sign it and they move on. If they've made the common mistake, we say, hey, look, we think you've made this mistake. Let's try this. Get them back on track and they can move on. So we've been doing those checkpoints for years. That's been working well. So I did a takeoff on this model, and now I have, and typically there would be one of these checkpoints in every lab. So my new idea is that the checkpoints have a modified purpose. It's not just to get them through a stuck part in the lab. It's actually for evaluation and feedback on the spot. So during the lab period, after every chunk of work, there is now a checkpoint. So for the lab we just went through, after they answer all those prediction questions about all those weird directions and how things are going to move, they have checkpoint 1. And it says, have an instructor come check your questions and initial your lab report. The next one comes after they get the motor working. And then there are 2 more after they have to apply all those theory things to how the motor functions. So they have to do one hard question, then they have to do another couple of hard questions. And after each chunk, they call us over. When we get there, we look at their work and we really, really look. We really check. So we'll take a seat next to them. The first thing we'll do is we'll look at their written answer. If the written answer is perfect, they've communicated well that they understood, we sign their lab report and they move on. If their written answer doesn't communicate super well that they've understood, then we have a conversation. I'll say, okay, can you tell me what you did here? Or can you tell me what this means? And I'll speak to one partner. If the other partner doesn't pipe up, I'll ask a directed question of that partner. And I try to get each of them to convey their understanding to me. If they can show they understand me in words, then I sign their book and we all move on. If they don't understand at all, that's absolutely fine. That's why I've sat down. I help them through the bit they didn't understand. I might say, well, if we look at it this way and if we turn it like that, then this is what would happen. If they say, okay, I think I get it, then I will leave them for 5 minutes to work on it, and then I come back. When I come back, if they can communicate verbally or in writing that they get it, then I sign their book and they move on. So when the book is signed, that's a signal that the student has completed the task, and they've understood well, they've demonstrated understanding to an acceptable level. That's what the signature stands for. So that leads to a change in grading policies. We don't have to regrade those questions when the lab reports come in. They're already graded because they've been signed. What's kind of good about that, so let's just switch to the advantages. What I think is kind of good is that the evaluation happens at about the same time that they do the task. They do the task, they call us over, we tell them right or wrong. It is happening immediately. And then they're getting the feedback immediately. It's like, wow, you did that great, good job, super. or no, you've got a mistake here. Let's try this and fix it. And then they know what they did wrong. Then they can fix it and then they can move on. So everything is happening live on the spot. Another thing that I think is working well is it means the students can't really skip parts. Students lots of times will skip a few questions because they don't want to bother or it's too hard or whatever. Here they don't tend to skip it because they're told they have to call an instructor over. And we're walking around, we're looking at books, we're seeing where they are, and we will just check their work even if they don't call us over. So it's good. Nobody gets left behind. Everybody gets a discussion with the TAs or the lab staff. So everybody gets checked on during the lab. And it kind of backs up my philosophy that grading and feedback is part of good teaching. You know, it is a part of the teaching tool. So I think this immediate stuff hopefully is helping. Okay, so those are my checkpoints. This is a research project with research questions where I'm asking students' perception of the universal design and the checkpoints. I will need to be collecting data from students. That's going to start in winter 2026, so the winter term. The entire class is going to be invited to participate in surveys. In these surveys, I'm not going to read through all these questions. They're just there on the slide. I'm going to ask them what they thought of the pre-lab videos. Were they helpful? Did they watch them? Did it help them feel prepared? Did it help them do the lab? I'm going to ask them about the checkpoints. Did they feel like they were learning? Did they feel confident? Did they get through the lab successfully? I'm going to ask them some summary questions about each of these 4 features. What worked, what didn't work, what helped them learn? Is there anything that we could do better that would improve their learning experiences? So we'll definitely go through all of those in the survey portion. Ah, super. I'm so glad to hear that, Diana. That's really great. Oh, amazing. Thank you. Um, Of the students who do the surveys, they'll all be invited to take part in an interview. If we get a bunch who want to do an interview, we'll take a small selection randomly. Those are going to be just a smaller group doing the surveys, and we'll just ask the more open-ended questions. Did you use it? Did you like it? Should we keep it? Would you recommend anything new? And then there's some targeted ones. How did each one individually help? Did they use them? I want to probe a little bit about the checkpoints. One thing that I'd like to look into is, do they make the students feel comfortable or uncomfortable? If students are uncomfortable with it, I would like to make some adjustments there because I never want a student uncomfortable in my lab. And then there's going to be summary questions. Did the labs help with the course? So those are the sorts of things I'll be asking in those. Um, that kind of takes me close to the end. Just before we move on to the questions, I'd just like to offer some thanks. Thank you so much to Amy Golden for having me here and arranging all this and talking me through Teams for my first time ever. Thanks to CITL and MUN with their financial support through the TASI project. Extra thanks to Dr. Keith Power and Sean Fardy, my collaborators. You know, you don't get anywhere without a good team. So that's everything from me. I'm quite happy to be part of a discussion, answer questions, hear your thoughts, whatever you have to offer. Oh, that's amazing. I'm so glad to hear you're going to try some of that stuff, Nicholas. I've started trying to branch it out into the other labs as well. So I started making the pre-lab videos for another one of our physics course this semester. It seems to be taken off well. I think I'm going to keep it up just as good course development, not just as research. Um, limited by time or class size. Oh, okay. Maybe if it's okay, I'll answer Diana's question first and then come back to Amy's. What I'm concerned about with the check-ins making students uncomfortable. Yeah, that's a good question. So some students are very comfortable if you go over and sit down and say, tell me what you thought. Some students are great with that. They don't mind. They communicate really well. Not everybody is like that. Not everybody wants to have a conversation with the lab instructor or their professor. So that's what I worry about. Am I putting students too much on the spot? It's sort of why I start with reading their written work first, because that almost feels a bit lower stakes. But I'm afraid students are uncomfortable just watching themselves be evaluated. Yeah, it's why I want to flesh it out more with the survey and the interview questions. Um, yeah, and sometimes too, I wonder about culture clash. Because we've got worldwide cultures. Not everybody's from North America, and maybe they're just not happy to have their instructor, possibly not happy to have their female instructor sit down next to them and talk. So these are things that just go across my head a little bit. So if somebody was limited by time or class size, where would I suggest they start? Yeah, that's a good question. I would probably just start with a task. So is there something you do with your students that you feel like they could use a little extra help on? Is there a place where they don't understand written instructions and they might benefit from a 2 or 3 minute video? That might be a place to start. On the spot grading, teachers are probably amazing at that already. But just a little tiny bit at a time. You take one thought, just one task, one thought, one day where you might be able to pop this in. If you wanted, like if students were doing a task that they typically struggle with, yeah, you could make a little video and just have that as part of the class along with the instructions. Yeah, always start small. My videos, they don't take very long to make, probably because I'm very low tech. I just bring my iPad down to the lab. I point it at the computer where I'm standing. I press record and I go. One take only. I make mistakes. I say words wrong. It doesn't really bug me. Um, so I don't invest a lot of time into making highly produced videos, just sort of a one shot. Oh, hey, that's great, Laura. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, a tech writer, that's really interesting. You don't see the chat on the okay. So if you want to read oh, okay. If you want to read it, you can. Okay, Laura's is really long. Okay, but I'll start. So Laura's writing, I'm loving this so much and I'm learning so much. I'm a technical writer and we are always kind of in this accessibility space, of course, but seeing the same sort of problems framed through a lens of an educator really helps, I think. It's the same way, but also so different. The stuff that we hold sacred in the industry may be both poison and cure, detracting from effectiveness. I don't know. And there's also the aspect where most of the time we don't hear anything back. And if we do, it's slightly truncated. We don't grade the customers. Good one. But certainly their success has everything to do with their satisfaction overall. Personally, I see myself in your students. I was that person who would read the instructions and get stymied on a detail. Me too, Laura, me too. So it's personally very meaningful and possibly explains many of my difficulties in STEM as a student and in life. Oh, Laura, that's such good feedback. Thank you. I could see how this sort of stuff would be useful in tech writing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's definitely different and the same. Like it's a different lens.
Yep. Oh, I wish you'd been in my physics labs. I hope you would have liked them.
Yeah, and me too, actually, me too. I mean, honestly, if I could go back to high school and, hone in on those mathematics, it could be, yeah. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and it was, like I said, personally also very meaningful. So,
Oh, super. Thank you. Okay, Amy is writing, we have a lot of K to 12 instructors in our community of practice. Can you share similar strategies? Can you share strategies for implementing similar strategies in K to 12 settings? Um, yeah, I think most of this stuff could work in school as well. Like, why not? Um, I probably think already that a lot of K to 12 instructors do on the spot grading and feedback. Teachers are just an amazing bunch and they work so efficiently and so effectively. Um, but I could see a place where you could make the videos for your tasks, play them on the smartboard. If you're getting a student started on a worksheet, then you could have a video doing the first problem, modeling how to do it. And who knows, their little minds, maybe seeing you in person is one thing, and maybe watching it on a video is another thing. Or if your kids have homework, yeah, maybe that's more for the older children than the younger children. But if they had homework tasks, there could be a little few-minute video that you put up on the Google Drive for the kids to help them through their homework tasks. Or if they're making a report or a project, so maybe those instructions would go in video format. Yeah, my guess is you're probably all doing the immediate feedback and checking and evaluation. Oh, Diana makes a great comment. That's a very fair and considerate concern. And I guess this is back to students being, yeah, but the last question, students being uncomfortable with the checkpoints. Maybe having a TA when available to do the first check-in, less pressure than I say the grown-ups. Now the TAs are grown-ups, of course, but they're a little bit closer to their undergrad days than I am. Yeah, I think that's a super suggestion, Diana. I first rolled out these checkpoints the summer semester. And in that summer semester, we didn't have TAs, it was just us lab staff. So this winter, it'll be rolling again, and we are going to have staff and TAs. And I had the same thought as you. I think if the TAs check in with the students, especially the ones who just seem that little bit reluctant to talk to us. I probably will send the TAs to them first. And I agree that the students will feel more comfortable. We see it all the time. Students work well with the TAs because the TAs are so good. They were there, a few years ago. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Diana, and I'm hopeful that that's going to work out.
Not sure. Can you hear me? Or is
Yeah.
my okay, perfect. Yeah, I was thinking about it would be a difficult thing to try to balance where like on one end my brain kind of went to like maybe making it a bit mandatory would make it feel less since it's quote unquote mandatory, then it's expected that you go up for the check-in and it feels less um you feel like less of a I don't want to say black sheep, but I think you know what I mean by going up and talking to the professor. But at the same time, then that would probably increase the degree of discomfort that the students would feel. Whereas if it's entirely voluntary, that would obviously make it more of a comfortable thing since it's something they don't quote unquote have to do. It's just a bonus. But anyways, that's I was thinking a bit about the dilemma there where you're making it optional versus making it mandatory and trying to balance the comfort around that. I don't know if I articulated that the way I wanted to, but I think you know what I mean.
No, you articulated it perfectly. And it is something that my RA, Sean, brought up about could the checkpoints be, either opt in or opt out. And I think that's a good point and it's worth exploring. Um, I just haven't figured out how to do that yet. How to communicate to students that, yeah, I just haven't got that figured out yet. Or extra credit, yeah, maybe. Um, One thing I do, and this part is really important, is before every lab, I touch base with my colleagues who are in the lab with me, and then I spend extra time doing training sessions with my TAs. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time stressing on is how important it is to speak well with the students. We need to be kind. We need to be respectful. These are not kids, they are adults in an adult learning environment, and we need to treat them like adults. Um, Sometimes the TAs don't really get that. So I have to watch and supervise that very closely because I don't want anybody speaking disrespectfully to the undergraduates or putting them on the spot in an uncomfortable way. When you communicate with the students, you always have to give them the out. You can say, did you think about this? And you follow up with immediately, it's okay if you didn't. You can laugh about your own experience. I tell students, I would do it this way, but then I've been doing this 30 years. I think you do have to speak to them carefully because it's really important. You're there to support them learning, and that's kind of goal number one, and everything has to be done towards that goal. So I do try to be careful about the checkpoints, but thinking about making it optional, that's something very good to aim for. Yeah, they always need a graceful exit. They've always got to be able to say, I don't know, in a way that's not embarrassing. Yeah, okay, great. I can jump in. I can mute. This is something I can do.
Folks, we just want to check in to see if anyone else has any comments or questions for Kelly. You're welcome to come on mic or type them in the chat. And Kelly, thank you for leaving so much time to answer all of our questions and respond to our comments. This is wonderful. Okay, seeing as I don't think we have any more, I want to take the opportunity to say a huge thank you to Dr. Shorlin for sharing her work with us today. I think that your use of formative checkpoints in the labs is a very clear example of UDL in action, and something that resonated with many of us here in the chat. Checking in early and often to support engagement, giving students multiple chances to show their understanding, and using feedback to remove barriers before students fall behind are all really important principles of UDL that we've been talking about in this fall series. I also wrote down, I was really struck by your phrase, no one gets left behind. And I think that really captures the heart of UDL for me and others, where we're trying to design learning with student differences in mind from the start, rather than waiting until someone is already struggling. So I think that resonates with many of us outside of physics as well, thinking about how we can do that. And the checkpoints are such a great example. I'm thinking of how many ways I can also implement that in social work. So yeah, that's wonderful. So I want to thank you, Kelly, for such a practical, thoughtful example that so many of us can take back into our own teaching context. And we really hope that you will share the results of your study with us.
For sure.
So would